I worked for Gucci on Rodeo Drive. And over time, I ended up dating a farmer. And so I moved from LA to a little town of 1,000 people and became a farmer in Iowa. When I was a city girl, I bought into a lot of myths when it comes to farming. I thought I had to buy organic, non GMO, gluten free, hormone free, all of these labels that are on food packages. And as I became a farmer, I realized that a lot of things people think are bad or good.
Farmers, you're probably sitting in the ute, sitting behind a mob or in a tractor, just having to think of like who is advocating for us on farm? Who is pushing what we're needing? Who's showcasing like what is going on within farming? Every stream of it here within Australia, we have this unique platforms that we can utilize. I built it up through the Farms Advice podcast, but for you to have your say from your niche as well. If you do, just tag Farms Advice where you can share it, amplify what you want to get out there as a farmer. But what we really want to do is connect the really good conversations that are happening not only in Australia, but happening all across the world. And that's why I've got today's episode with Michelle Miller, otherwise known as the Farm Babe. And she's doing some tremendous work. And the statement that got me to reach out to her to have her on the podcast today was if consumers' perceptions, they would change if they walked a day in a farmer's shoes, just to know what has to happen from the time that you get up till the time you rest your head back down on the pillow. So I think it's a really important conversation. It's a cool conversation to get a glimpse into what's happening in America, but I think like it's a unique time right now that we need to really drive in and make the most of it. Like Jeremy Clarkson's farm has really opened up this as a conversation, not only for us on farm, but for those wanting to know what's happening. Can they connect the dots? And I think obviously consumers are wanting to know where their food comes from, and there's so many variables that go into it. And I just think that there's some controllable ones there as well. And I wanted to share this episode with you, or just to get this one done, so that we can see what's going on out there in the wider world for global agriculture. So let's get into this episode. I'd love just you as the farm babe. To me about your journey to where you are today and you're so passionate about what you do.
Yeah, so I was a farmer in Northeast Iowa for about 8 years in my 30s. I'm 44 now. Well, my birthday's next week. I'm 44. But I actually went to college in Los Angeles and I was very much a city girl. I worked in the fashion industry. I worked for Gucci on Rodeo Drive. And over time, I ended up dating a farmer. And so I moved from LA to a little town of 1,000 people and became a farmer in Iowa. So my tagline is Rodeo to the Rodeo. And my passion for ag advocacy kind of came from the fact that when I was a city girl, I bought into a lot of myths when it comes to farming. I thought I had to buy, organic, non GMO, gluten free, hormone free, all of these labels that are on food packages. And as I became a farmer, I realized that a lot of things people think are bad or good are not. And so it's, farming, there's pros and cons to every farm system, but a lot of people are just buying things based on fear and misinformation and not understanding the role of well-funded activists and sales and marketing behind food. And so I took it upon myself to be a voice for science and farmers, and I've been doing this 12 years now. So it started off as a blog on Facebook in 2014, and it's evolved over the years to be I'm also a podcast host and a columnist and a social media influencer, keynote speaker, author, all sorts of good stuff. So I do everything I can to improve perception and policy for farmers all around the world. I've also been to Australia a few times. I've been a speaker and an advocate for Australian farmers as well, and have been to all 7 continents. So international travel is my other passion, with 70 countries, and realizing that feeding the world is a lot more than just what we do in our own backyards. Local family farms are amazing, but feeding the world really is a huge international feat to keep everybody alive and fed well. So
Absolutely. I also think from the farm side, it's really good to know what the consumers are wanting and needing. We probably in Australia, we find that information at the conferences sort of dictate what we should be producing. I suppose like fruit and vegetables, a lot closer to the consumer, and they get feedback 12 weeks for livestock producers, winter crop for us. I only get that feedback once a year for that. And for that to fizzle down into the farm of what and how we can better produce and everything. Thought or you said about like if consumers walked a day in the shoes of farmers, then they would start to understand the intricacies of what happens on farm, how we do what we do and when we do it. Time it's not up to us of when we do it, it's up to the season. So like there's always some sensitivity in there, especially for cropping, livestock, cut their teeth and everything. What do you see in that and how can we improve? Obviously consumers can't come on farm and walk a day in our lives.
Yeah, I think people would have a much better understanding if they understood all the challenges that farmers face, especially in terms of like policy where everybody wants chemical free. Well, first of all, everything is a chemical. So there's no such thing as chemical free because even water is dihydrogen monoxide. It's a chemical. And people don't realize that organic can use pesticides too. And it's because people want perfect produce. And as farmers, when we're investing, millions of dollars into farms, we have to have a return on that investment, which means we have to have yields, we have to have a crop, which means yields matter, which means we have to use pesticides. And those have been used for thousands of years. And I wish more people understood just how much, we don't want to use them, but how minimally they're used. When we're only spraying maybe a couple days a year at a few ounces or whatever the case may be, our food's really safe and we eat what we grow. So I think I'm trying to remember exactly what your question was because I think I went off on a little tangent there.
It's just like for the consumers to today in our lives to better understand of where their food does come from. That sort of city country divide we call it in Australia. And personally, I think that we need to be working on the farms internally rather than our external image. Then external gets a lot better. Do you see that a bit of a role in there as well, or is it should we be doing more for the consumer?
Think just there has to be more education and there has to be more advocacy and communication from our end as farmers to really be talking about what we're doing and why, and stressing the importance of understanding us to improve policy and improve perception, really. As if everybody's fighting for things that they think they know. I mean, everybody wants to tell the farmer how to do their jobs, but they've never done our job. Food is emotional and it affects every single person. It's not like, people can go without a bartender, right? But they can't go without a farmer. It's everything that they do is dependent on everything that they consume is dependent on what we do. So there's got to be a better communication strategy there.
Where do you think the intervention needs to be? We call it primary school, or like high school, college, I suppose, because it's a lot easier to influence but educate the younger minds than it is for those that have already made their mind up about agriculture, wherever they've learnt it.
Yeah, I think education is really key for sure for young people. And the realities of it. I mean, I remember when I was learning about farming as a kid, it was just seeds with water and sunlight, and it's not always so cut and dry. And having people at production agriculture sites and real commercial scale farms that feed masses of people. I think a lot of people would be really impressed, but they just don't get an opportunity to see that. So, yeah, I think education at the school level, but also for like social media influencers and celebrities to come onto farms. They're very powerful, influential voices. And right now, the people funding the Netflix documentaries of the world are very well funded, and it usually comes from activists. So I had a call the other day with our National Pork Producers Council that oversees the entire United States pork industry. Their budget is 300,000 a year for like media marketing stuff like that, whereas an animal rights activist, their budget is 30 million for the year. So you have HSUS, PETA, all these different animal rights activist groups that are spending hundreds of millions of dollars on the budget to produce these documentaries, shockumentaries, I call them because they're not true, but they're really gaining traction by utilizing celebrities and the cool kids, if you will, on social media. And sometimes as farmers, we tend to speak to each other a little bit too much and we tend to stick in our little bubble in our circle, but we really have to branch out and on that My tagline is rodeo to the rodeo of like when they want to educate students, they say, let's bring the FFA kids out. I don't know what you guys have in Australia. If you have like FFA and 4 H, like, do you have stuff like that?
What does it stand for? FFA?
Future Farmers of America or 4-H, like it's youth education programs, but they're like, "Well, we need to teach kids about agriculture. Let's bring the FFA kids out." And it's like, "No, you idiot. Like they already get it." Like you have to get you have to get the LA kids, like you get the New York City kids, get the affluent,
So true.
wealthy, the most affluent first world problems are the ones dictating how we do things, and that's going to affect the poorest people in the world. So we can't just have the first world budgets dictating how we feed people that can barely afford to feed themselves, you know? So it's a trickle down effect.
Absolutely. I think, like, have you seen there's a bit of a cowboy culture, and especially coming from America, Yellowstone, there been the ability to, like, jump on the back of that as farmers because, like, that was a bit of education, be it blown out of proportion, Yellowstone for every other farm and ranch there. Can
Yeah.
we, like, we need to harness that sort of energy, have it, so consumers, this is what is happening. I don't can't remember that. Is it Rick, main player? His wife, like, having those sort of characters within that, the consumer, something to attach themselves to or, like, them in their own shoes.
Yeah, I think that helps. I think the cowboy culture trend, the farmhouse trend, all that is great. But it's also kind of like attracting more money and wealth into these areas where the property values are going up. And in a sense, it's almost like they want to buy out our farmland and then they don't actually farm or ranch with it. It's just like a wealthy person's playground because it's like, oh, we live in this region of Montana. It's where Yellowstone's filmed. And then they feel cool. But then they're, in a sense, kind of putting farms or ranches out of business because they might offer the rancher an offer they can't refuse. I think COVID was a big shifter for that too, is people realizing, oh, I can work from home. Well, why do I live in the big city when I can, what do I get for a $500,000 in a big city that I could get a whole plot of land in the country? And so it's good and it's bad, but I do definitely appreciate the educational parts of it for sure.
We learned over the last 12 years, we've got similar journeys. I was also this was a blog before it was a podcast. Probably more
Hmm.
people read your blog than read mine. But what has changed and what have you learned throughout the industry in the last 12 years? Because change has been dramatically increased throughout that period. With technology, we communicate, policy, I mean, like COVID was a huge thing for the world.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest takeaways I've had is that we really can move mountains. I think our voices in agriculture can be and are way more powerful than we give ourselves credit for. One of my biggest claims to fame is the Burger King story, where through the power of social media, I got Burger King to retract a one of their ads and do more pro farmer type ads and commercials for their global marketing strategy. And so that was pretty neat just to see the takedown of Burger King, where their global chief marketing officer came to my farm. They had done this really awful ad that talked about methane gas coming from cattle, and it was a horrible, horrible, horrible ad. And it made farmers look like a bunch of environmentally destructive jerks and it was really bad. But through the power of social media, of getting them to retract these ads, they were like doing this whole it's called Cows Menu. If you want to look it up, it's hashtag Cows Menu or the Cows Menu Burger King ad on YouTube. Oh no. Well, you'd have to search for it because they actually took it down. I mean, that's part of my claim to fame is like getting them to take down the ad because it was horrible. There are still some like knockoff videos of it out there, but then they did a new commercial that they filmed on my farm. And so that's like one example, but I've also been invited to the White House and Mar-a-Lago. I've testified in the Senate and the front page of the New York Times and Reuters and Forbes and all of these things. All that to say, I never in a million years thought that by starting a Facebook page or a blog, it would grow into something so exponentially influential. When they say that we're social media influencers, like we are influencers. And to get invited to the White House for events is mind blowing, but it just goes to show the power that we as influencers have. I know you found me through my Substack article, but I did another Substack article that talks about how influencers are the new lobbyists. And the thing about it, relationships matter. And so when I do these political events or I get invited to these Maha type events, I've met so many activists and people that are leading the Make America Healthy Again movement. And I've realized that a lot of them are way more movable middle than we give them credit for. I think there's so much divisiveness politically where everybody says, well, this is this and this is that. But when we really come together and listen and learn, we realize that we can have a much bigger impact. People respect farmers. They like farmers. They like farming. They just don't trust big ag and the government. So when you tell somebody you're a farmer, there's a really good chance they're going to say, wow, that's really cool. You're a farmer. Well, I don't trust those big ag corporate factory farms. And it's like, but I am one, right? So it's like the farmer's values aren't changing. Just the size and the scope and the technology and the landscape is changing. But it doesn't mean that we're changing as people, as salt of the earth farmers. We're just able to do things bigger and better with fewer resources, fewer chemicals, being better environmental stewards. And when we tell that story, I think people want to learn more. I think they're really curious, but they just don't always get the chance to learn. So you could be in the. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Jeff Bezos, like just to tie him into it somehow, had that like a billionaire sort of mentality. People want to shoot him down for how big he is, but like it all sort of started from franchise, and that's just what scale is, and like how you might be able to bring that into larger farms. Because I sort of see here in Australia, we've got the corporate farms. The family farm should be sort of shooting for those practices, those structures and policy that they have to bring into the family farm. I think what they do that way can really set up what family farms do or their lack of capacity. Well, so I think internally, like that's really what farms are shooting for to get that scale themselves so that they can profitable. But with profitability comes sustainability and the capacity to look at these different avenues to juice or promote Kate side of the farm. If not, we're just so busy day in, day out. We don't have the capacity to do what we need to or what the industry needs us to do. Um, and that's where we rely on the likes of you, Michelle, especially for your country and your state or Florida, what you're doing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd be curious to know because, like, here in America, too, like 97% of farms are family farms. And I think sometimes they look at like corporate farms, but it's like, well, what is a corporate farm? Like, a lot of family farms are incorporated or they're larger scale, but then it's like they're still family farms. So, yeah, I don't know. But regardless, there's pros and cons to every type of farm, and you can be profitable. I know some farms that are very profitable off of an acre because they sell direct at a premium price for a premium market. And then you also have people that are farming thousands of acres that can barely turn a profit because of their input costs that are skyrocketing. So everything's a little bit, everything has its pros and cons, and we really need all different types of farms, whether they're big or small, or, there's a market for everybody.
Do you know Katie Thornton? Like you had a
Yeah.
photo with her.
Yeah. Apple Girl Kate. Yep, for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm a keen advocate for what she's doing. Uh, like it's a different sort of. I'm from a sheep livestock background, and to what side of the world's doing within apples or advocacy of how she does it. I think it's so natural for us to talk about our products. For us as farmers to have a platform is so important. It's authentic. Like you're rooted in facts. Well, that is all we have is the facts. One's behind farming and what's backing us, only working within regulations, the policies passed on to us. We're not sort of changing them too much, probably needing a lot to be changed. But I think it's so important, like the likes of yourself, like Katie, advocating for your niche of the sector, so for the wider industry of agriculture.
Yeah, I ran into Apple Girl Kate at the White House as well. There was about a dozen of us influencers from across the country that were there, and it was really great to connect and just kind of like high five each other in person, because we all have the same goal, but it's important to like be in the room with these people and have conversations of like having our voices be heard and not necessarily just taking everything that they give us. I don't want to drink all the Kool-Aid either, right? Like I don't publicly discuss my political opinions, but I just believe like some people, whether you love Trump or hate him, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. An invite's an invite. And whether you want to agree with it and love it or push back on it and disagree, there's a lot of opportunities, but nothing changes if we just sit back and don't go.
It's so important to be room, whether you're a fly on the wall, you're having conversations about agriculture or having your opinion. Because if you don't speak up, who's going to do that for you? Especially if you come from a niche sort of sector in agriculture as well. But do you
Mhm.
want to just quickly touch on like where you think American farming is the your goal for the next 10 years or like with your work that you're doing? What do you hope that comes out of this advocacy? Because talk all day, whether people want to listen and introduce or change some things that will really help.
Yeah, my goal is to just become a louder voice in a more mainstream media way. For example, like I'm going to New York City on Wednesday, and I'm really excited. I'm going to be on the Scientific American podcast, and they're interviewing me about the role of misinformation in agriculture and policy. And so, just I think having larger scale platforms like that. I mean, I've been trying to get on Joe Rogan for years, but like something like that would be a dream, you know? And just have my voice be heard because right now the celebrity farmers that we have in the US are doing a lot of regenerative type practices and they do a lot of things well, but they also bash conventional agriculture. And so I'd like to be a more inclusive voice for people to like not take everything they hear on media at face value. There's a lot of disinformation out there now coming with regards to like pesticides on produce and people not trusting or like being fearful of eating strawberries, for example. And that's insane. I want people to eat more fruits and vegetables. I want to make America healthy again as much as the next person. But in order to make America healthy again, we have to have policies that protect farmers that understand if people don't feel comfortable purchasing fresh produce or healthy, lean proteins, what are they eating? You know? And when somebody's like, well, I could eat these non organic strawberries or I could have like an organic cookie, maybe the organic cookie is healthier for you. And that's bullshit. But a lot of people believe it, you know? And so encouraging foods that come from farms to be the best thing that you can eat is great. And supporting farmers and having people be like, hey, like you can't just take that scary hazmat suit, friggin' chemical nonsense. It's like, God, how many people need to just go to a farm, you know? Like, I can't believe some of the stuff people believe, but I can believe it because I kind of used to believe it too before I became a farmer. When you only hear one side of the story, it's easy to go down a rabbit hole of misinformation, you know? Google isn't always our friend.
Absolutely.
Google isn't always our
And
friend.
especially AI, if you don't have the right prompts, you're getting shocking answers
Right.
regurgitated from wherever it's collected it from. I want
Hmm.
to talk about like labeling. I think labeling here in Australia and probably globally could be improved. Mentioned it just then. And like when labels are attached to a product, we've got a star rating in Australia and steak healthy stars than what a box of cereal is. Call it cereal in Australia, in America.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
breakfast. It's like how consumers grab that right. That's 4 out of 5, but I get the 3 or 2 out of 5. When it is the nutrient dense of a steak, whatever, and even everyone's smashing proteins. Anything with a label of protein on there, I think all the red meat, chicken, everything. We should be labeling how much protein is in there. For like protein bars, you should have to say like introduced protein, not natural sort of thing. You get natural proteins from meat. It's nutrient dense, or if it's from legumes, it's dense in nutrients as well. It's not just thin protein into that combination of the mix. But where does labeling sit with you? Because you have so many consumers in America, we're a tiny little market here in Australia.
Yeah, I mean, the ultimate food label is really that nutrition fact label. And that's all that should really matter, you know? And when you look at the nutrition label, I mean, I don't know how your nutrition labels are in Australia, but for us, it shows, and I think you guys have this too, right? Calories, protein, fiber, you know, sugar, carbohydrates, whatever, it all lists it there. Yeah. And the STAR program is interesting. That's something I don't think we have here. But yeah, I mean, I think education is really important. You know, I can walk into a bakery and say, well, I'm looking for something that's a little bit on the healthy side, which to me means a small portion. It means, you know, fewer calories. It means, you know, maybe sugar free, something like that. But a lot of times they'll say, oh, if you want something healthy, here's a gluten free or a vegan option. And it's like, well, unless you have a reason to avoid gluten, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's healthier for you, you know? So it's just debunking the noise of marketing versus what actually matters. That's the real nutrition that shows on the nutrition facts and not just all the buzz fuzzy feel good type words to charge you more money.
Absolutely. So, what's your podcast called? How can people tune into what you talk about? Huh?
Heard it here. It's a puncast.
Yeah. Good. Well,
HERD. So it's all about puns, the Farm Babe Puncast.
it is the Puncast.
It's the puncast. But Farm Babe on Facebook is where most of my followers are, and I'm on Instagram and everything else at the Farm Babe or thefarmbabe.com.
Australia brought up in conversation, like within advocacy or like how we farm down or over in America up there.
I think we talk about it a little bit for sure. I think you guys have a lot of the same challenges we do. I've heard a lot about Queensland and like water rights, right? And trying to put the target on farmers' back for water pollution or, cotton farms not having the correct water right allocation and stuff like that. I think I've heard a lot of buzz around cotton, probably more than anything, But yeah, it sounds like you guys have similar struggles we do in terms of politicians not necessarily understanding us and what we need.
Me, I think that we're so siloed within our states. We've got our, what is it, 7 states and territories. The policies can change across lines. Oh, but no doubt in America, quite hard navigating the different policies out by the states. They're quite on board of sort of driving this at a federal sort of.
That's one of the big things we're fighting now is patchwork, is 50 different states having 50 different ideas. A lot of times it probably should be more of a federal level. Different policies are, and it's a good thing and a bad thing, right? Because you have, red states versus blue states versus, politicians that are way more city focused than they're more farm focused, and you get the wrong person in a position of power. And that can have really detrimental effects. So yeah, there are some states that jump out at me that my state being one of them, Florida is pretty pro farmer. I'm pretty proud to be living here. I think we've got some pretty decent politicians. But then somebody like Colorado, farmers are really struggling out there, especially because they get their water from snow, right? And the snow melting in the wintertime, and they barely got any snow this winter. So it's when farmers are dependent on that water and they don't have it, it's a struggle. And a lot of them were, and now we've got droughts and fires. So it's pretty catastrophic right now. We've got like millions of acres that have been totally burned to the ground across Colorado, Utah, Nebraska, and so forth. And even after the fires are put out, where did the livestock go when all the barns and buildings are gone? So it's a lot of rebuilding, and it's important to have government to protect and help us rebuild and provide resources necessary to protect our farms first and foremost. Some states have a better understanding of that importance, whereas some are like, just get our food from the grocery store and it'll be fine, So it's important to improve perception and policy and support ag number one. And it's sometimes when you don't live it and breathe it every day, we can be forgotten.
Now, I think COVID was a huge driver of like, why isn't that food on the shelf when I want it? That in Australia, toilet paper was first to go and like the food was going as well. Like a shock to the system of understanding people actually needed at that time, or it was interesting to measure what consumers not want to go without. In Australia, toilet paper number one.
Yeah, I'd say here too.
Yeah, advocacy, like even for what I'm doing as well, but I'd love to know, like, how do you measure success for what you're doing? The platform can get bigger and bigger. So hard to like attribute it, those sort of marketing terms of, "Okay, so we've improved by this much or whatever." How do you measure it, Michelle? How do you do it?
I think it's just being in social media all day, every day, and what's trending and what's showing up in algorithms and news feeds just plays a role. The activists are very loud, but I think when we have policy that protects us and wins, like we just had a big Supreme Court win, the politicians are realizing the importance of, like crop protection, glyphosate type herbicides, which a lot of people are against, but if they understood, if we got rid of glyphosate tomorrow, we would be resorting back to much older, much harsher, way worse type chemistries. So it's not ideal, but it would be, and we're working on better and safer products and methods in the scientific community every day. But as of right now, I think for them to realize like, hey, this is an important tool and it's important for global food security. That was a huge win. So I think despite loud activists, when we see science prevail, that's great. And I can just tell just from being in this all day, every day for the last 12 years, you can see how dynamics shift. You can see what's working and what's not. You can see our industry fighting back. Some of my biggest wins, for example, are just getting invited to different political arenas to be a voice on the forefront of all of this. And like my Burger King story I was talking about and just different media outlets that I'm doing. When you're catching like other these large media outlets, when they know who you are and they want to talk to you, that's huge. And so, and just some international work as well, like getting to talk. I've been a keynote speaker now across 4 continents. And so when you get to learn from, the challenges of Irish farmers or Australian farmers or in South Africa or whatever, we can learn a lot from each other too. And so I think just different things like that where you can learn what one part of the world is doing for better or worse and how can we utilize that education and so on. So there's so many ways, but I do feel like we're having an impact. I do see other farmers on social media reaching hundreds of millions of people each year, and that's just a testament to like the power of our voices, and we should never underestimate that.
I think that's it's really well put. Like I've got the hashtag on just TikTok as a platform. It's probably got like 30, 40 million impressions. And like for Australia, that's more than our population. So Fox
Right.
can sort of move on. And I think like as farming, how do we celebrate that? Australia, we're quite humble. Sort of say we need the city of Australian, but the sales pitch of an American to run a really good business because you do it so well, like the way that you're brought up. We probably don't speak up enough in Australia, and especially on social media. We've got a bit of tall poppy syndrome. Do you know what that is?
What syndrome?
Poppy syndrome, when you shoot, like if someone starts to speak up or tries to build the platform, like in any industry, and people just sort of kneecap them to bring them back down to earth.
Oh,
What we're doing essentially. And I think it's tarnishing for the industry, so for the person, but like I think we really need to back the likes of you, Michelle, self humbly saying that to like push the bar of what we can do within the industry so that we can make change within policies, within government, so that we can improve the lives of many farms out there, 97% of Americans and 99% of Australian farms here. I think how you sort of should that of how you do measure it, it is that consistency over your 12 years you've been doing it. Most people would have backed out. It's a crazy fight to keep improving we're doing as well. Huge applaud for you, but like what you've done, you've sort of set the platform. Others can come in and learn from what you've done and jump on board and improve what their niche is, especially if you're a farm as well.
yeah. I encourage people to be less humble. Like, screw it. You know what I mean? Like, just like you're not just a farmer. Like, if we don't get out of our comfort zone, nothing, what is it? A comfort zone is a comfortable place, but nothing grows there or something. One of those stupid quotes. I don't remember. We don't grow unless we get out of our comfort zone. And being humble doesn't really get you anywhere. Like, yay, you're humble. Now what? I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with people bragging on themselves a little bit. The most successful people in the world kind of talk themselves up a little bit. They have PR people for a reason. They have PR teams and media teams. And I don't think there's anything wrong with people kind of preaching what they're doing. And that's how they get respect sometimes. It's like if you're not tooting your own horn, who will? And I don't like it when farmers are like, I'm just a farmer. No, you're not. Like, that's insane. Like, we are nothing without the farmer. Nothing. Not just the food we eat and the drinks we drink and the clothes on our back, the military uniforms, the sporting equipment, the musical instrument strings, everything that comes from livestock byproducts, the renewable energy, renewable gas that comes from methane, textiles, fibers, life saving pharmaceuticals, animal research for saving lives that comes from pigs that came from a farm. Everything comes from a farm. And I think raising awareness on how amazing farmers are is huge. Maybe they'll actually get a little bit more respect. You're not going to get respect if you just sit back in the background and don't do anything about it. Like, what we're doing is cool. I'm honored to give them a voice. And I think the more people speak up about what they do and the more people learn, the more we really can move mountains. But it starts with the industry just kind of growing a pair. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it's
that's so
okay
good.
to like be a little bit more edgy. We're not edgy. Knock it off.
Instead of being like sitting on the fence all the time, I think it's really a good way to put it. And like to put height back into the industry, we need to make it sexy industry to attract people to work in it, bring the kids back home to the family farms, to bring the likes of yourself, Michelle, and then like celebrities can jump on board, which like we've seen a little bit happening over there in the States.
Yeah.
Farming is sort of becoming cool, and it's always been cool to us in farming, for others to know the journey of how that apple gets there, how that steak gets there. I think
Yeah.
it is getting educated at scale now, like not only in the States, in Australia, globally, people are wanting to know where their food comes from, but we need to make that content cool.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. I think we've got some pretty cool like NFL players, like pro athlete that are, retired, that are farmers now, that are doing a really great job of advocacy and making farming cool, and getting the celebrity type people out there is really important. And yeah, just there's so many different ways that we can make farming cool, but it definitely starts with those the cool kids.
Joel, it's been so good to have you on the Farms Advice podcast. Being a smaller industry or country, up to what America's doing and is heavily influenced into farming practices, because a lot of the larger ag companies, they're all selling down here in Australia. So we need to learn and be proactive with what we're doing.
Hmm.
So for taking that advocacy piece and really doing something with it, they're still getting capacity to, or the people are finding how to do it as well. And I think we're really learning that part of it as well, and following in the footsteps of yourself, and consumers can really understand what we're going through farm as an industry, because we employ so many people and in the States as well. So thank you for in your busy schedule now that you're jet setting off to New York on Wednesday and just got back in for the weekend.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Be your number one piece of farms advice you'd like to pass on in what you're doing? How can we be better?
Yeah. I think just never underestimate the power of your own voice. Being a social media advocate is also a way to diversify the farm through media, is it can turn into another source of income and revenue. So regardless of your farm, if you are doing direct to consumer sales, utilizing social media as a way to raise awareness and boost sales and marketing for any type of business, but also for the industry in general. So, diversification is good in terms of livestock or crops or media. There's just so many different outlets. So to treat media as just one more outlet on farming and business is really important. But that you speaking up could lead to things that you never thought possible. So you're never just a farmer.
Well, look at us two go at it right now. Where would you like people to check out what you do, the Farm Babe? Where's the best spot for them?
Yeah, so most of my followers are on Facebook. So just search Farm Babe on Facebook. And then Instagram and all the other platforms at The Farm Babe, or my website is thefarmbabe.com, and you can learn all about me and my work.
Well, I'll add them in the show notes so anyone listening can go and check out the Farm Babe. Well, Michelle, Farm Babe, thank you so much for coming on the Farms Advice podcast and passing on your knowledge, your expertise. Luck for the rest of the year, and we'll keep in touch.
You as well. Thank you so much.
Farmers, the conversation doesn't stop there. You know that all too well. If you've been listening into from the very first episode with James McKenzie, or to this episode 288 just for Farms Advice podcast, we're well and truly over 300, including what we've done with Farm Yarns and the little ones in between, the bonuses. But it's so good to be able to talk to you frequently through this medium of podcasting. But come across, sign up to the Farming Life and Business newsletter. The link is in the show notes, or you can find it all across our socials. And we'll get our guests to write a little segment about what's important to them under the title of Farming, Life and Business, and how we can tie those three together. So come across, continue the conversation, subscribe to yourself in 2026 and beyond. And I think the opportunity is really there for us to grab that. Whether you're a young one working on farm, your farmers' kids coming in, trying to navigate how to work it all out. And if you're the parents listening to this as well, geez, you have some learning to do as well. Like we never stop learning on farm, and podcasting is a really great way to upskill without leaving, but just to have new ways of thinking, even connections. I'm sure Michelle, the farm babe, would be keen to connect with more of you on social. So go ahead, find her in the show notes as well. But until next episode, keep on farming, keep up it, keep at it. See you next time.